Hey guys, this is Josh, Stoney Rich Farmer. These aren't beans, they're gourds. Good gracious, this gourd is like 5 feet long. Today on the farm vlog, we're gonna take you into the garden. We're gonna be picking tomatoes and we're getting prepared to can our tomatoes. So we're gonna take you in, we'll show you what we're picking. We'll tell you a little bit about the thought processes of what we're doing. And then in a future vlog, we'll show you how we're canning our tomatoes. So let's go in the garden today. We'll talk about the garden a little bit and we'll also give you a few tips on getting ready for canning. So come along today, we're gonna have some fun. These are huge. So one of the questions I get asked a lot, because our garden is producing more than we need, really. I mean, look at these gourds. I don't even know what we're gonna do with them, but I do know what I'm gonna do with them right now. So we'll throw them into the chickens, and anything that's extra that's going to waste will either be put in the compost or put with the chickens, okay? And we'll break these gourds up and the chickens will just chow down on them. Awesome. So folks, here we are in the garden. As you can tell, we've had a lot of rain and it just kind of knocked everything down, overweighted everything, and things are just toppling over here in the garden. We're at the point in our tomatoes where we're about to call it quits. We're gonna go ahead and keep harvesting tomatoes as long as the tomato vines will keep growing them, and we'll keep canning them. But what I'm gonna show you today is our thought processes and how we pick the tomatoes and what we pick and what we leave on the vine. So these tomatoes here are our Roma tomatoes, okay? And what you're seeing here is the tomatoes that are just getting ready to get ripe, and they're just starting to turn. We pull these off the vine as soon as they start to turn so that they don't fall off and go to waste on the ground. You don't pick a tomato up off the ground and can it. You just don't do that. So any of these tomatoes that have fallen off and hit the ground, we will not use them. We've got some awesome, delicious Roma tomatoes. We have 2 rows of Romas. Now these tomatoes here are called Patio Delight, and let me show you a little bit of undelightful situation. So the tomatoes split. These guys split on the end, and the reason they split is because they started to turn, which stops the growth of the skin, and they absorbed more water. So we got a rainstorm after it started to turn, and they split. They're still good for canning, but they're on the edge. They'll eventually develop a mold or a mildew in those cracks, and they'll be unusable. So we'll take this guy and we'll throw him to the chickens. By the way, the chickens love tomatoes. Now with our recent extreme weather, I haven't had time to get in the garden like I'd like to. So we're gonna go in, we're gonna pick a bucket or 2 of tomatoes. Now something that you really need to know about picking tomatoes with a bucket or a box is you only want them 3 layers deep. Once you start stacking tomato on top of tomato on top of tomato, and you have them 4 and 5 layers deep or a full bucket full, you're gonna smush the ones on the bottom and they're gonna rot before you can can them. So think about that. So basically our garden has remained pretty much weed-free since early spring. And the reason it's remained weed-free, I'm gonna pick and talk by the way, the reason it's remained weed-free is because we came in, we took care of the weeds early on with the hoe, and then we came back behind and we lightly mulched the area. And as you can see, there are just no weeds in here to speak of. Maybe a little sprig of grass here and there, but really, honestly, no weeds to speak of. Our garden is flourishing, it's doing wonderfully. It just takes that little extra touch, that little bit of extra work to get it done right. Now, if you're considering growing a garden, I don't recommend you grow a garden this big for a family of 4. I recommend a smaller garden. Start small and go get yourself some double ground mulch from a local supplier and spread it down just very thinly around your plants early on in the year, and you won't have weeds. So folks, a lot of planning and thought went into our garden this year, and a lot of that planning and thought has been shared with you, and it's really paid off. I hope you'll watch all the garden series that we have here and stick with the channel. We'll have a whole lot of awesome tips for you in the future about living in the country and clearing land and working the land and feeding your own family. Now we'll keep on picking our tomatoes, and anything that's bad, we'll toss right over to the chickens. Everything kind of has a symbiotic relationship here on the farm. So if we're over here picking tomatoes and we see one with a bad spot, we feed it to the chickens. We don't pick them up off the ground and try and can them. That just gets bacteria from the ground in the tomato, and it's gonna set you up for failure. Later on in your canning, maybe 3 weeks down the road, all of a sudden you'll smell some stink and it'll be your cans going bad. So we do not take them from the ground, no matter how beautiful they are, and try to can them. We've got a lot of tomatoes here. Probably 50 pounds of tomatoes today to pick. And we only planted somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 or 60 tomato plants. All right, look at these guys. There we go. Even these guys that have just barely started to turn, we'll go ahead and pick those. Now, on this tomato, we call this the stem or the pecker. I call that the pecker, and you want to get that pecker off before you put it in the bucket, because if you don't, it's going to stab right into the other tomatoes in the bucket, and you just don't want that. We've got a lot of tomatoes, and this is just what tomatoes look like when it's close to the end of the season, except for the ones that fell over because of all the rain and storms we've had. So I'm going to get busy here in the garden working on these tomatoes. I'm going to pick them all, and then we'll take it in the house and we'll show you how we store them before we can them, okay? There's a specific way that we set them out to get them ripe before we can them. So stay tuned, all right? Guys, what a bounty. We're all done picking tomatoes. It seemed like the more I worked my way through the garden, the more tomatoes that I found changing color. So I got done working and got done going through the garden and went back through, and there were more tomatoes that looked like they turned red as I was walking through the garden. Anyhow, we're gonna go up to the house here and I'll show you how we store the tomatoes and what we're doing to prepare for our harvest and our canning. Now, be sure and don't be shy. Leave some comments down below if you have any suggestions or anything like that. We're gonna get up here, we're gonna start canning probably in the next couple days, so be sure you subscribe and check out that vlog. We'll teach you how to can tomatoes successfully, okay? It's a little complicated for some folks, but it's not really all that complicated. We'll simplify it a whole lot for you. Let's go get in the house. Whew. Boy, it's hot out there. So we got our tomatoes here, and we're going to show you what we do in the house. So here we are in the house, and this is our prep table for some of our tomatoes. We'll go ahead and set those tomatoes out on that prep table. And this is our harvest for the year so far. Now, all of these tomatoes were fairly green when we brought them in. They had just started to change color, and you can see that they've turned an awesome dark red. These tomatoes will keep in here for approximately a week and a half to 2 weeks. And pretty much you just have to kind of sift through on a daily basis and make sure nobody's starting to get any rot. Now, a little bit of dry is okay. We don't rinse our tomatoes before we store them. We rinse them right before we blanch them for canning. And this is one that has a little rotten spot on it. So we'll throw that to the chickens. We'll set it aside. And basically every day, just kind of go over the tomatoes, and you can see where some have started to get a little bit too ripe, and I've pulled them out of these little areas. What we'll do next is we'll cover all of our counters and also this 8-foot folding table right here with tomatoes so that we have enough to do a lot of canning and make some awesome sauces. Now, as you can see, we've got our canning set up going over here. We've got some jars washed. We'll go through all that in a future vlog. But this is how we store our tomatoes, and we always put the blossom end up and the stem end down, okay? Always put the stem end down, and do not let these tomatoes come in contact with each other. It's a good idea to keep a fan going on them all the time. Don't let them touch and let them breathe, okay? So guys, thanks a lot for watching the vlog today. I hope you learned a little something about tomatoes and about growing tomatoes and about getting ready for canning tomatoes. So we'll see you next time on the next vlog. Be sure to pound that like button, subscribe to the channel, and I thank you a whole lot for coming today. All right?
In the land of the free, in the home of the brave, I'm proud of who I am, and I'm proud of what I made on a Stoney Ree. Woo!
Hey, honey, I'm putting this on the video. No, you're not. Oh, yeah. Guys, look at what we got right here. This is today's tomato harvest, just one day's tomato harvest. We are gonna have our hands full canning. It's super duper awesome. This is Mrs. Stoney Ridge, if you guys haven't met her. She didn't get in the garden because those little biting bugs, they like her a lot more than they like me. All right, guys, we'll see you next time.